Hey guys, Matt Greer here. So a lot of people have been wondering what all these forms are that they have to sign before they purchase a house, before they even start the buying process. So I'm here to explain that, and if you're one of my buyers in the future, I'm probably going to send you this video to go over it really quickly. So as real estate agents starting this year, they made it mandatory that before we start showing homes, we have a buyer broker agreement or a showing agreement. And personally, I think that's great. It's something that I've always done because what it does is it explains how we get paid. Now we charge commission, or at least I say I charge commission, that's what I should say. Every agent is different, but generally speaking, it's a percentage. And on the buyer broker agreement, we state what that percentage is, and then typically we are able to get that as a concession from the seller. So what are these forms? Well, let's go over them. So the first one that I typically do is a buyer broker agreement. I have it right here. So this year they actually made it a little bit bigger, so it's actually 3 pages. What it does is it just states, basic information, the broker, the firm, the agent. It also says, when we are your real estate agent. This expires. It says it starts on this date, ends on another date. It also says what we're helping you with, whether it's a residential home, land, commercial, and whatever we agree to, that's all we can help you on. Next thing it does is it gives the agency relationship. This is actually covered by another form here in Arizona, the Real Estate Agency Election and Agreement, which we will go over. So for me, I would say, as stated in the Real Estate Agency Disclosure and Election Form. Then it says right here, this is important. Broker compensation is not set by law nor any board. So there's no law saying what we can or can't charge. There's no normal rate, there's no standard rate, there's no such thing. Every agent is different. That's why, maybe you want to shop around. I get it. Okay, then you have, if there's a retainer fee. These, for me at least, are rare. Generally speaking, they only happen if someone is trying to do something crazy or they need me as a consultant and not someone to actually sell something, but it's rare that I do that. Next, right here on the very bottom, it says, what is our compensation? What are we charging for our services? So that's an important part, and it has a percentage, flat fee, whatever it may be. Okay, the next page goes over. It states that hey, there's compensation that can come from the seller. This is generally how I get paid. Is I go to the seller and I say, hey, compensation, I want to get this percentage, and they agree. Now I cannot basically make a whole contract hinge off that. So if they're like, hey, we're not going to pay that, that doesn't mean I can just be like, hey, you can't buy this house, sorry. No, what it does mean is that I will talk with you and let you know. Now this isn't an issue that I run into a lot. I'm usually able to get what I want, frankly. The next thing is just after the expiration date, which just says that hey, if we're showing you houses and this expires and then you want to buy one of the ones that we showed you, we did the work, we deserve to get paid. So that, haven't had that happen ever, just because I generally get people into the house they want right away. I don't waste time. It also says that, hey, we follow equal housing laws, and that, we might have other clients looking at the same property. Okay? And then this last part is just the legalese. It says hey, if there's an issue, we'll talk it over. Also, this is subject to Arizona law. So very simple. Now, that is a buyer broker agreement. This is what we need to be able to start writing offers on your behalf. Now, if you don't want to sign that, you don't want this person to be your agent, then we have this. This is the buyer broker agreement to show property. This is kind of like if you want to have 7 days where you go look at homes with that agent. This is the form to use. It's not a buyer broker agreement. It just lets us show you properties. It does say that hey, if you decide that you want to work with us, this is what I charge. And if you want to buy one of these houses, then I get to be your agent. That's basically it. If I do the work, I should get paid. That's what that's for. This is more of a short term. This is more of the long term. Let's actually start writing contracts. I generally just do this because most of my buyers come to me and want to work with me and want to start writing offers. Now, this one is the real estate agency disclosure. So what this does is it lets you say how we're going to work for you. Now, this just states that right here on the second page, how I work for you, that, I'm going to represent you, and that, if my firm has a listing that you like, can I show it to you or not, just because I might be working with the seller as well. That's where we disclose all that, cover all that information. So this is an important form that, we would go over as well. All right, so those are the ones that we have to have when you first start looking at houses. So that, I know a lot of people who've bought homes in the past are like, hey, I never had to sign a form before, and you're correct. But starting in August, they made that rule change, and it came with, some agents who did some dumb stuff, quite frankly. And so now we have to have that. Now the next are disclosures. Now these disclosures don't have to be up front, but they should be. I don't know why some agents don't give them up front. I like to have them up front because I like my buyers to know what's going on. So the first one that I always talk about, which I think is one of the most important ones, is the wire fraud advisory. What this does is it lets you know that, hey, wire fraud is a real thing. Before you wire money, confirm who you're wiring it to. Don't trust emails, give them a call, and just double check that you're sending money to the right people, because there have been times in the past where someone has gone to wire money to who they thought was escrow, but the email got intercepted by a scammer and they wired the money to some offshore account and it was gone. So always double check who you're wiring money to, call them, confirm, don't trust emails. Okay, next one. This is a disclosure that we're required to have. And by the way, these disclosures are, we have you sign them just as receipt that you were given them. They're not any binding contract or anything like that. It's just so that we can prove if we get audited that we showed it to you, because they are required. This next one's hilarious. This is the market conditions advisory. What this does is it says that the real estate market is cyclical and real estate values go up and down. So basically, as time goes on, home prices change. Someone in the past, I guess, did not understand that, got really upset that their home price changed after a few years, and now we have this form. It's crazy. I can't believe it, but we have it. So there's that. The next one is it covers everything, and it's a lot of pages, but I highly recommend you read it, and that is the buyer advisory. What the buyer advisory does, it says right here on the first page, it has common documents a buyer should review, physical conditions in the property the buyer should investigate, and conditions affecting the surrounding area that the buyer should investigate. There's a lot in here. It even says on the first page that it's supplemental to obtaining professional property inspections, which, by the way, if you're buying a house, even if you're buying a brand new house, you should get an inspection, because a lot of the stuff that's in here, a home inspector will be able to find. It starts off, you got the basic table of contents, stuff like that. And then it says common documents a buyer should review. It goes over all of that. This is the boring stuff that I help you out with, but you should always go and check yourself, no matter who your agent is. Unfortunately, there's some people who don't review these things. So, it goes over. First thing, purchase contract. Know what it is you're doing. Contingency waivers. Know what those are. For example, if your financing falls through, you can use the financing contingency. That's important to know. MLS printout, that's actually that's always changing, but that's important to know, because the MLS printout will have just different things about the home that you might want to know. Subdivision disclosure reports, that's a public report. This is really important on new construction, because on new construction, the public report lets you know everything about the area. It even starts talking about the soil that the home is built on. It's really important to have. If it's not a new build, then you're going to want the seller's property disclosure statement. That's on here as well. The other thing too that a lot of people do not look at is the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, also known as the CCRs. That's your HOA. Okay, so you have the HOA, but you also have actual just rules that have to do with the city, that have to do with the neighborhood, that can be put in there on what you can do with your house. And the very next thing is the homeowners association governing documents. that it talks about, as well as HOA disclosures. So important. Okay, I know people who have purchased homes, didn't look at this, they weren't my clients, and then they found out that they couldn't do something with their house. For example, I had one guy a while back who wanted to sell his home because in his HOA, when he bought that home, he didn't look it over. His agent didn't give it to him. And this guy didn't know that he couldn't park his car in his own driveway because of the HOA. And that was a big deal for him because he had a big truck that barely fit in his garage. So every day he had to work to get that truck in there, and it really bothered him to the point where he came to me to sell the house to move to a neighborhood where he could park it in the driveway because it was just easier. Community facilities district. This can be important if you're in a newer area. Sometimes there are assessments that you'll be paying with your property taxes, so you're going to want to know that. Title report, loan information documents, home warranty policy. That's all stuff that we'll go over too. And yeah, it's pretty important. Okay, it also starts talking about other issues that you can have with the home, such as lead-based paint disclosure form if the home is built before 1978. Termites, other wood destroying insects. That's important to know. We can do that inspection. We can find out if there are termites or if there ever have been termites. If you aren't an American citizen, this talks about FIRPTA. That's the Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. That's important to know. Okay, like this thing covers so many things. Okay, then it goes over common physical conditions in the property a buyer should investigate. I know this is where it gets boring, but well, this whole document does, and this is probably one of my more boring videos I do because we're not in a house, but this is the important stuff. Okay, so common physical conditions in the property a buyer should investigate. This is where you want to hire a professional home inspector. Now, I personally have a home inspector that I really like. I have a few, but I have one who I always recommend above the others just because a lot of home inspectors will spend 2 hours at a home looking around. The guy I hire, I recommend really, is he spends about 5 to 8 hours at a home. He finds everything. I know a lot of real estate agents are afraid to use inspectors like that because they're afraid they'll kill the deal, but I'd rather kill the deal than have you buy something that sucks. So this talks about different things you should look for. Repairs, remodeling, new construction on homes. You know, if someone remodeled a house, did they do it correctly? Did they hire the right guys? Did they get the permits? Because if they didn't, that's something you could end up having to deal with in the future. Square footage, something to know. It's not my favorite way to judge a house because I've seen homes that are a little bit smaller, but they're built in a way and laid out in a way where they feel bigger, and vice versa. The roof. This says that if the roof is 10 years or older, a roof inspection by a licensed roofing contractor is highly recommended. I agree. And any home inspector is going to inspect the roof anyways, but when it gets older, you might want to go ahead and pay a little extra money to get the roof inspected by an actual roofing contractor. Just make sure it's not their sales guy. All right, swimming pools and spas. Get a swimming pool inspected if you're going to have one. There's a lot that can go wrong, and everything on a pool is expensive, although they are a lot of fun. Okay, septic and other on-site wastewater treatment facilities. So you were actually required by law, well, the seller is, to get the sewer inspected when they are selling one here in Arizona. And yeah, you're just gonna want to know what's going on in there. Is it leaking? You can usually tell because the grass starts growing really well. I've had that before, but you're gonna want to check that. Okay, sewer, is it connected? Sometimes, especially in certain areas like older parts of town, you might want to get a sewer scope. Have that thing checked out because there have been people who purchased home. In fact, I know an agent who purchased a home, did not get a sewer inspection, and then they found out that they had a crack in their line and they had to get it replaced, and it was very expensive, and they just barely purchased the home. Okay, soil talks about that. Home inspector will look for that. Previous fire, flood, we will get that in the home property disclosure. Pests, definitely get your home inspected for pests. The home inspector will look for that, but you can also hire an actual pest inspector who's going to look for termites, bed bugs, gross, scorpions. Guys, this is Arizona. Scorpions are everywhere. I hate to say it, but are there too many? Yeah, get a pest exterminator always. Endangered or threatened species. This actually happened to me. This one talks about it. I was purchasing a home, and what do you know? there was an endangered bat living in my attic. That was something else. This was on a home that I purchased that I was going to live in. This was at a time when I was about to have a baby. My wife was pregnant, and we were just sitting there waiting to move into our new home. And we couldn't until the EPA could get this endangered bat out of my attic. And then I had to have someone come and put netting on the entrances to the attic to make sure this endangered bat did not come back. Now, they got it out, the bat was safe, and we were able to move into the house. But it delayed us by about 2 weeks. That was the only time I've had to deal with that. Now, the next one is very interesting. Death and felonies on the property. This talks about it. By law, sellers are not required to disclose that. They don't have to tell you if someone died or if someone committed a felony, maybe a felony that caused the death in the property. They don't have to do that. The information it says is difficult to uncover, but just beware of that. Sometimes you might buy a house and then find out that something crazy happened there. Yeah. Okay. Then it also starts talking about indoor environmental concerns. Being radon, gas, that is something that comes out of the ground. It's not too popular around here, but you never know. They might want to vent it. It's an issue that I personally have not ran into. I have had people inspect for it. I haven't ran into it, but definitely if it's something you're worried about, get an inspection, as well as carbon monoxide. For carbon monoxide, I recommend getting a carbon monoxide smoke detector. Okay, another thing is drug labs. That's something that this covers. That could be a concern in the house. If you're worried about that, definitely have it tested for that, and look into that. I haven't had that issue with the neighborhoods I'm looking into. Property boundaries, it also talks about that. You might not know where you can put a fence if there isn't one already, in which case you get a survey done. Okay, flood insurance, floodplain status, that is definitely something you want to know before you purchase the home. Is it in a floodplain? Because if it's in a floodplain, insurance is going to be much more expensive. The other thing we do is an insurance claims history. You're going to want that. We have one that goes back 5 years that we do before we purchase a home that's been lived in. This says that you want to do that. As I said, this is the boring stuff, but it's important. So if you're still here, good job. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. The other thing is other property conditions. It says plumbing, check functionality. With that, I will say look for polybutylene pipes. Those are crazy. They just randomly blow up. Burst is the right word. There's no rhyme or reason. It could be 1 year in, it could be 20 years in. They just go. They don't install them in homes anymore, but if you have an inspection report that comes back and says that, dude, get that checked out. The other thing is electrical systems. Check them for functionality. I have an inspector who I like because one thing he'll do is he has a thermal scanner, and he'll point that at that and find out if something's overheating. That's pretty important. Okay, then it also talks about the surrounding area. So definitely when you're buying a home, I'm recording on my phone and someone called. Anyway, sorry. Definitely look at a map. Seriously, when you're buying a home, look at a map. Find out what's around it, okay? That is something really important to look into. So this talks about stuff that is an environmental concern, and you have environmentally sensitive land ordinance. I had that with a home that I owned back in North Carolina, where part of my backyard was considered a wetland, and I couldn't do anything there. I owned it, but I couldn't do anything there. So that's something I want to look for. Electric and magnetic fields. That is something that can happen now. I didn't know what that was. In Arizona, you have Superfund sites, which are basically the groundwater's been contaminated, or the soil has, and those would be marked. And yeah, they do a pretty good job of managing those, making sure we don't have them. Freeway construction and traffic conditions. Okay, this is one that surprises me. When you're buying a home and it's right next door to a freeway, like you can see it, you're probably gonna hear the freeway. Okay, when you're looking at the home, go inside and see if you can hear it. Okay, there's a lot of people who don't. Yeah. Okay. Crime statistics. Look at a crime map. That's something that as a buyer you should do. As agents, we can't always disclose some of these things. So what I do is I say, hey, go look at the crime map and decide if it's something you'd want to do, as well as look at the sex offender registry. Okay. I don't know if I can say that word on YouTube, but I just did. It's important. Look at that. Okay. If you've got children or someone you're worried about and you look in next door, there's someone who could be an issue, definitely look into that. There have been lawsuits in the past for that, but on the seller property disclosure, they're not required by law to disclose that. So you kind of got to look at the map yourself. This also talks about forested areas. We do not have that in Phoenix. Military and public airports, we do have that, okay? So here in Gilbert, which by the way, I'm in Gilbert now. I still live in Mesa, but my office is in Gilbert. But in Gilbert, right over at the Gateway Airport, guess what? They've had a lot of F-35s coming out of there. They're very loud, and people are surprised. Okay, if you buy a home near an airport, you're gonna hear airplanes. Okay, if it's a military airport, you're gonna hear really loud airplanes. Zoning, neighborhood, you know, look into that. Make sure that they're not gonna be building something crazy like a landfill next door. Schools, take a look at what school it is. That will be disclosed on the MLS. Just ask your agent, like, hey, what school zone am I in? But also here in Arizona, we do have school choice, which is pretty nice. Okay. This last part, section 4, is my favorite part because it takes all those crazy things that I just talked about and sums them up. It says, drive around the neighborhood. That's what I recommend. Okay. Go into the house, close the door, close the windows when you're looking at it, and listen. Are you hearing noises that would bother you, like a freeway or a loud airport? Then go outside, get in your car, roll down the windows, and drive around the neighborhood and look and listen. Smell. If you're next to a farm, does it smell bad? Okay? Do those. Do it with the windows down. That's what I recommend doing. Very simple, but a lot of people don't do that. Get to know the neighborhood before you put in that offer. Literally, if you go and you look at a home and you're like, I like this home, I think I want to put in an offer, get in your car, roll down the windows, drive through the neighborhood, and look. See if you really want it, okay? It also says talk to the neighbors. That can be pretty good. I've noticed that when you talk to the neighbors, there's 2 neighbors that you'll run into, and you might run into them at the same house. You have the neighbor who everything is fine and dandy, and you have the neighbor who hates everything, and he's going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff about the house that he somehow knows, even though he didn't know the owner, and everything's horrible and going to fall over. Talk to all of them, okay? Get all sides of the story. I've spoken to neighbors before and actually found issues on a home that my buyer was going to buy, and we addressed them. Okay. This next one talks about all the other advisories that you're going to have. Fair housing is one, which somehow isn't in my pile of papers, but fair housing is an important one. Okay, we don't discriminate. It covers that in here. Also has wire fraud, market conditions advisory, and the last page, buyer acknowledges receipt of all 13 pages of this advisory. Yes, it is 13 pages. Okay, it's important. This thing covers everything. I mean, it took me like 10 minutes to explain it, probably more. But anyways, that is the stuff that goes into a real estate transaction. That's kind of the boring stuff, but it's the important stuff. And remember, now, full pile, we are required to have these before we start showing homes. Okay. Now, one thing that I will say is that, you know, it has the term, like, for how long it works. I generally do 6 months. Usually I have people in a house within, you know, 1 to 2, depending on how picky they are, really. But, you know, with me, if you decide that you don't want to work with me and you're like, hey, I got 5, 6 more months left on this contract with you, but I don't like you, I don't want to work with you, just tell me. Me and most agents, if you just tell us, will say, well, if you don't want to work with me, I'm not going to force you. And we'll just cancel it. That's always been my thing. I haven't had that happen yet, but I'm open to it. So that's how those forms are. If you made it through this whole thing, congratulations. They're long. Most people get those forms and just sign them blindly, and even though, I mean, I trust myself, and I really try and put my clients first every time, I still recommend you read through them and just know what you're signing, okay? So if you made it all the way through, don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate it. I will be at more houses tomorrow, and those will be coming up soon. All right, have a good day.